His name is Sam Ingenuity McCleery. Now, Ingenuity might not technically be his middle name, but it should be, considering he has been at the middle of what sports media has done in sports in general in advancement and technology. He's got a lot to tell and do and say on that front, and we're going to explore that here on the Onto Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio and also a broadcaster with live events. Of course, McCleery was behind the 25 innovations that define modern sports. We're going to find out about a lot of the innovations that define Sam McCleery. I think this is going to be that reflective piece where we get to dive into that. Sam, I really appreciate you doing this. Thanks for making the time.
My pleasure, Brian. I'm also excited and looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a stimulating session.
Yes.
Yeah.
And right from the start, I think you'll agree it will be, because my first question for you is this: what's beautiful about your mind?
So I think I've always been curious. And that means also not afraid to ask questions and to sort of pursue areas that you didn't feel comfortable or confident in, but you were still eager to learn about them. And I think what you need if you're curious is you need good mentors. You need someone who along the way is going to give you a greater opportunity to expand your horizon a little bit, give you things to do that are out of your skill set, and you grow that way. And as the red thread in my 40 plus career in this business has been really how technology has defined the way we watch and the way we play the game. I've always been fascinated by technology that makes it easier for the consumer to watch, understand, or play the game. And if you create great technology that does that, the consumer will definitely reward you.
Sam McCleery is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. If you were, and this is sort of a hypothetical situation, Sam, if you were to create, because so much of your career is in the field of sports and you've done so much work in innovation, but if you were to tap into something with that innovative mind you have, which I find, Sam, it'd be hard to turn off, even if you're working outside the sports industry, just in everyday life, I just have this feeling, this gut feeling that innovative side of you is always there, omnipresent, 24/7. So if you were to look at how, despite the fact innovation is seen over the course of your career in sports, how do you find that mindset sort of infiltrating other areas of your life as well? Maybe unexpectedly, maybe just seemingly out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think, you can tune in anytime during the day, the 24-hour cycle, and see a live sports event on streaming or whatever platform you choose. If you're on the brand side of the business, sports brands like an Under Armour, anytime you go out, you're looking for your brand and seeing how your brand compares to others. I tell people that one of the great barometers of who has brand heat is to go to a game, youth game, go to the airport, go to the mall, and just look at what people are wearing. And that'll give you a very good indication of demographic, of gender, perhaps even income. And you can sort of then benchmark how that brand is doing. So, sports never ends. It's around us constantly, and that's the beauty of it. But you're right, you can't turn it off. You can't walk away from this. It's a very immersive experience. I tell young people, Brian, that you have to sacrifice something to get into sports, because generally the most important sports events happen at night and on the weekend. So you're giving up a lot of nights and you're giving up a lot of weekends to be in front of the camera or behind the camera to produce sports. So you do have to sacrifice some. It's a very big change in lifestyle from the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday that your peers may engage in.
And with that said, I look at a lot of the pictures behind you, and obviously you've worked and you've gotten to know some of the biggest names in sports, and the autographs. You've got one of the best man caves out there. I mean, let's just be honest here.
Yeah.
Let's be honest here. And having that obviously shows your dedication to sports, but like you said, the sacrifices, the grind, the sweat that comes with it. That also is possible because of your support system around you, in that they empower you to do these things. How has your family been by your side through this, encouraging you along the way?
So I think what my family's done most for me, and I've been married for a long time, I've got two grown children, is that they've let me do what I want to do. And as I said, in this business, when you have to work odd hours, you're doing a lot of traveling. You have to have a flexible family schedule. Um, and when you're not home for that parent student conference, or to see that youth game, or to attend some event for your wife, you have to make up for it in other ways. You have to overweight other things to balance out, like, he's not here, he's at the Indianapolis 500 for the next 3 days. You have to find a way to sort of fill that bank with experiences and time and attention when you're away. So it takes a flexible family, but you have to listen. You have to work hard to give it back to the family, because they do give you a lot of give up a lot, or you give up a lot as well.
You have given up so much of your time in this business to grow and to succeed and to rise up the ranks. Early on, the formative years for you, what did sacrifice look like, just vividly, in how those were those early moments where we got to really start to get the foreshadowing of what you would become one day?
Yeah, so sacrifices. I mean, my career, I started off with a startup tennis racket company selling tennis rackets door to door, and then went to a much larger company, a division of Adidas France, and then went back to sort of an entrepreneurial life when I was hired by Howard Head at Prince Tennis. And you do have to sacrifice, certainly when your early stage, early 30-year career is with startups, and you're in an emerging company, because there's absolutely no guarantee of success. I point out to people that ESPN was launched, first night it went over the air was 1979, and only 20% of American households had cable. So even ESPN, that we look upon as a absolute guaranteed success, it was by no means guaranteed in 1979, when only 20% of the addressable market could do it. But in the early third of my career, it was about just taking a chance with exceptional founders, which I was fortunate to work with, and understanding that this may not work. And if it doesn't work, you better come up with something else. And I've had experiences where I've struggled to get things going, and I haven't been that successful. I've been fortunate in that I've worked for a couple brands that took off, in not because of me necessarily, but because of brand momentum and other successes. But yeah, I think the sacrifice is, you're not sure when you're in this business. So much of it is startup and the emerging technologies, that you're going to be a success. So you have to be prepared. This isn't going to work. And if it's not going to work, mentally, you have to accept that. And as I say, one of the great features of Nike is their ability to recover from crises or controversies is really about their ability to replace. If something goes down, they can replace it right away with something else. And I think I took a little sort of a personal lesson to that is, if this goes bad, if this doesn't work, I need to replace it with something else as quickly as I can.
If there was like a predictive graph, and I would extrapolate, and it sort of was looking at your life, I know you said there's no guarantees, that, with hard work, sometimes things don't pan out and sometimes things do. But I'm betting on Sam McCleery to make it. From an early age. I know you said that there's this unpredictability to what's happening, but just the way your mind is working, and I love tapping into the mindset, the psyche of who you are. To me, there was nothing but success in your future, and as you continue to climb from those early days, I know, and we've talked about this before, your list of the top 25 innovations that have defined modern sports. What do you Sam, think has been your greatest contribution to the sports business?
Yeah, I would say that we founded a company called Princeton Video Image, and it was a pioneer. And now we would look back on it, Brian, call it the first augmented reality company in sports for taking a computer generated graphic, inserting it into a live television broadcast in real time, and make it so that in that inserted graphic looked like it was there, no matter if the camera panned, tilted, or zoomed, it was perspectively correct. That's a long-winded explanation for saying we were a pioneer. There were another company as well who produced and delivered this yellow 1st and 10 line for football, which has been a must-have feature since the 90s. So I can look back and I look across television networks now and see ads on the wall behind home plate or the yellow 1st and 10 line or other sports graphics and say, you know, I wasn't the coder, I wasn't the engineer, but I made a number of good decisions that brought the product to the marketplace. And I think some good decisions that ensured, I think, the prosperity and success of the company. I think that's one thing I'm looking for, looking back at. You're looking over my shoulder here. I've got two things here, which I always point out to people. Maybe I'll ask it later. There's a plate here on the left, which is Norman Schwarzkopf's coat of arms. And next to it is a football by Ronald Reagan. He signed for me. And I used to joke with people that at one point in my career, I worked for the two toughest bosses in America, Norm Schwarzkopf and Nancy Reagan. And I'm not kidding. They were tough. Producing a tennis event for the Reagans at the White House and later at the Riviera Country Club after the Reagans left office. And I did a number of shooting events for sporting clays events for General Schwarzkopf. So I've had some interesting bosses, but and that goes back to, you know, get lucky in your career to find a mentor. I mean, there's nothing worse than playing on a team or watching your child on a team in which they've got a bad coach, because it's a miserable experience. It's the same in business. You get a bad boss, manager, CEO, whatever it is, it's a miserable experience. Even though the company may be on a noble mission or make a great product, if that one human aspect of it, your boss, isn't great or very good, or you have respect for it, it's a miserable experience. So I've been lucky, although Schwarzkopf and Reagan were tough.
In what way were they tough?
Demanding. I mean, I remember having a conversation with Norm Schwarzkopf one time before the event, and I had to remind him. I said, "General, I am your army. It's just me producing this thing." And Mrs. Reagan, as you know, history books have documented, was a very demanding and protective partner to her husband, and so any decision or any suggestion was filtered through, you know, how will it look and can I trust this person? And she was very carefully selecting who would work and what the projects were. And this was just, I had just made a suggestion. I used to give a lot of tennis rackets when I was at Prince to the cabinet members, Reagan's cabinet members. And finally I said one day, listen, you got so many rackets down there, you're all playing tennis. Why don't we do a tennis event at the White House? There is a tennis court. And the quick answer came back predictably that we don't do that. We won't allow the tennis court or anything to be commercialized for that purpose. I said, okay. But then about 3 weeks later, somebody came back from Mrs. Reagan's staff and said, we're going to put Mrs. Reagan in a new program. It's a community anti-drug program called Just Say No. And we'd like to launch this thing. If we gave you the tennis court and a day at the White House with the Reagans, you know, how much money could you raise? And off the top of my head, I just said, I'll raise you $1 million, which actually, I had no idea how to do it, which turned out to be a low number at that time. Lots of people wanted to sponsor it. And I learned the lesson, which is, you know, if you don't ask, you don't take the bat off your shoulder, you're never going to know. So don't be afraid to ask the big question or be intimidated what you think the answer will be. Just ask. You'll never know.
How far back do you trace that idea of just asking, and that sort of that fearless mindset that you have had to carry? Like, how early on in your life did you see those sort of traits coming into play for you?
Yeah. So I was a very subpar student in high school and in college. And when I got out of college, I realized I really hadn't gotten educated through my own indifference, not the institution. And so the first thing I did is I subscribed to Business Week, Forbes, and Fortune magazine. I said, I'd better educate myself real quickly here. And I still, to this day, subscribe to Fortune
Wow.
and to Forbes. I don't subscribe to Business Week anymore. Um, and I continue to educate myself through those kinds of media or periodicals. I think it's necessary. I just didn't apply myself uh, when I should have, when my parents were paying tuition. And so I took on what I call self-education.
What led to that wake up call, the change in you?
I just thought it was unprepared. I mean, I started to interview for jobs in New York, and I thought I was decent at interviewing. But when I went back and sort of self-critique how that interview went and whether I was likely to get a job offer, I actually critiqued myself quite low. I thought, I'm just not very good at this. I can explain it, but I don't have enough information here. I don't have enough uh, material or content to make me look appealing to an employer. I've got to get smarter here quickly. And that was the only way I could figure out how to get smart quickly, which is to start reading all that stuff.
The way in which you critique yourself now, what's different about the boxes you check off, the way in which you perceive yourself compared to the younger version of yourself as you were explaining just out of college?
Yeah, I mean, I still, as I said, mentioned earlier in the opener, I'm curious. I will just about have a conversation online or any other way with just about anybody. If you find me through email, text, whatever, or you get referred by somebody else and you call me up or set up a time to call, I will call you. I will talk to you. Um, and and actually, I find it sort of energizing on my side. And I also learn some stuff, but uh, I still have that curious thing. Like, if you found me and you want to pitch me something or you want to talk about a collaboration, I'm certainly going to talk to you. I mean, I don't. I'm the easiest guy in the world next to Bryan Fenley to talk
Oh, stop it. You make it easy for me. Speaking of contributions, let's get into lacrosse, because that was one of the
to.
avenues of your career where you really were able to build up from your technology in the way that it's digested on screen. And clearly, it's a really, really growing product right now.
It is. I love lacrosse. I didn't play it in college except as a club sport because we didn't have it as a NCAA sport. My kids played. My son was a captain at Trinity College, and my son-in-law was a goalie at University of Virginia. Daughter played at was an All-American in high school at St. George's in Rhode Island, and all my grandchildren, they all play, every single one of them. And so I've been involved in it for a long, long time, and have many friends. The lacrosse community is very tight. I'm particularly good friends with the guys who are announcers at ESPN for lacrosse, Paul Carcaterra, Quint Kesnick. And I think it's growing as a youth sport and a popular sport for lots of documented reasons. I do think as a business model, Bryan, almost all the traditional leagues that we're familiar with that are successful, the money is at the top through sponsorship and media deals, and that money then trickles down to the grassroots. It's a little inverted in lacrosse, which I think we need to work on, which is the money tends to be more at the bottom, not at the top of the game. Travel teams, tournaments, lacrosse festivals, etc. And somehow we've got to figure out how to flip that so that there's enough money at the top on the pro league side that's a showcase for the tournaments and for the sport. So it's sort of the inversion of the way the NFL, NBA, MLS, etc. are modeled. I'll be interested to see how pickleball. My wife plays all the time. Surprised she's not out there now. How pickleball organizes itself as a sport so that it can appeal to big sponsors and big media. We'll see.
If I'm not mistaken, is it your office where you can hear her play pickleball from outside?
Yes, and when she's playing, I have to move out of my office to another part of the house so that you won't be, or will I won't be distracted by not only the sound of the ball, but occasionally I'm sure there's some naughty words.
What about you as an athlete? We talk about what you've done for athletes, whether it's Under Armour, whether it's ESPN, whether it's Prince, the list goes on. But the way in which you carry yourself in sports business, you talk about curiosity and that really being your middle name, and the way in which you've navigated your career. How much of what you're like on the business front applies to, let's say, whenever you get out there on the pickleball court and go up against your wife, or maybe if you go out there on the golf course? Where do we see the differences in who you are from playing and then helping present the sports, and some of the similarities too?
Yeah, I got channeled early by my parents into tennis. Princeton is a pretty big tennis community, and I was sort of plugged into the local community program. So I spent my early years and my high school years playing a lot of tennis, which I enjoyed. Then I got to college and realized I wasn't going to be a very good player. And this is my last opportunity to try a team sport, to actually wear a uniform. And I tried rugby and I wasn't very good at it. I didn't have I was too far behind other sports in terms of skill. And so a roommate of mine from Long Island, we started a club, Lacrosse. But since then, I've really gravitated towards individual sports. I played a lot of squash for a while. I currently ride a bike as often as I can. I think frequency is the key, not necessarily distance. But individual sports. And as I said to somebody the other day, my exercise is defined by subtraction. Take away what I can't do anymore. What's left? Walk the dog, ride a bike. Pretty bored.
Where do you go when you're riding these bikes and you're getting out there in nature?
Yeah, fortunately, Princeton's got a number of very well-groomed, safe trails through fields and woods, and you can ride these cinder trails for hours. And so that's what I do. I still have a road bike, but I've been encouraged by my wife to get off the road, and I know why. It's just not safe enough. You hear too many people having accidents, etc. So I ride on the trails. It's easy riding, fairly flat. It's lovely. I enjoy it. Great for your brain.
In what way? In what way?
It frees it. I think when you're looking at nature, as opposed to looking at a helmet on the other side of the field or an opponent in a tight court, you're focused on that. But when you're riding through the woods or fields, your mind just floats and you do your best thinking. It's highly creative. You wish you could stop and take notes. I do that frequently. But I think it's just the stimulation of seeing trees and all kinds of stuff in an ever changing sort of scenic environment. I find that not only relaxing, but also extraordinarily stimulating.
Stimulating when it comes to what you're doing work-wise and your contributions to this day to sports. What are you doing to channel in that mindset into what you're doing today and what you want to do in the future?
Yeah, so like most people during the pandemic, you got together with some peers, colleagues, friends, etc. You have sort of an informal exchange of information sessions and things like that. And I've gotten together with some colleagues, mostly from the brand side, and we have decided to sort of formalize this informal talking group, add some other people for balance and perspective. And we've actually got about 10, I would say, high octane, very high IQ executives from the sports brand business. And we're now trying to say, okay, since we've got some real horsepower here, how do we want to apply it? One of the ways we want to apply it is to offer our, quote, services up to entrepreneurs and business founders in sports who say, listen, I could use some help here on trademarks or patents or sports marketing or strategy, and then likely, hopefully, some number of us off this 10 plus group would say, I'll give you a few hours. And somebody else would say, I'll give you, some sessions to help you through that issue. It's commonly called a give back, I guess, but I would like to see more pro bono work done in our industry. And I think there's a lot of very good talent that is got a stacks of experience through the years. And we're trying to gather some of these folks together and then channel it, make that service available for, as I said, emerging companies, founders, startups, things like that, to try to make sure they're successful, set them up for successes. We've just started it, Brian, but it's been so far it's been fun, and we've gotten great reaction.
What ideas, Sam, and we're joined by Sam McCleery, I'm Bryan Fenley. What ideas do you find stand the test of time and go from one generation to another and remain relevant? And then others that maybe are generational and that you sort of, as you embark on this new frontier, which you're talking about, might need some tweaking?
So I think anything that makes it easier for the consumer to run faster, run easier, run with less chance of injury, watch a football game with the sound down in a bar, but understand where the line of scrimmage is. I think K-zone, I think anything that makes it easier for the consumer is they will reward you. They will watch more of it. They will buy more of it. They will replace it when it wears out. And I think that's been the lesson I think endures. And we've got lots of examples of how just on-screen technology has made it easier for the consumer. TrackMan in golf, K-zone, first down line, out-of-town scores on the bottom line, pylon cam, sky cam, all that stuff makes it easier for the consumer. I think also on the brand side, being able to draw this biometric data off the athlete, which kind of goes through 4 phases. Well, one, you got to collect that data. And then you got to be able to have that data be absolutely accurate. So accuracy and data is sort of phase 2. Phase 3 is add some data science to it, some analysis. And the 4 is make it shareable, actionable, right? And I think the next frontier is taking this data and being able to make some very accurate recommendations with it. And right now, we're just entering the phase 4. We're very good at collecting the data and with accuracy. It will tell you how far you've run. We tell you what your peak speed is. We'll tell you, what your how many hours you've been running in that shoe, for example. That's good. But I think we really want to know is if you exercise or run 4 miles more per week, what is going to be the effect on your body, et cetera? What can you expect from that? And I think we're close to being able to give you that feedback. That's extraordinarily helpful for, all kinds of, functions for the body, like lower your cholesterol. If you do this, if you run 1 more time a week or you run 4 more miles a week, you could look to reduce your cholesterol by 10%. Well, there's a target, there's a finish line that's worth it. Someone might say, I'm willing to do that. The benefit, the net result is good. And I can do that. It gives us that motivation. So it's the idea of collecting data. It's really important. Obviously, we collect data for other reasons too, right? To inform gambling and betting. But this data coming off the human body or the athlete is enormously important.
I like what you said there, Sam, because when the data presents a finish line that's tangible, it's more likely to be pursued by the consumer because it allowed them to be incentivized to track it down. I want to leave you with this last question. Sam McCleery is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. So taking the data that you have in a lot of different realms of sports, whether it's working out and understanding what an athlete can do to improve their performance, the elite performance, optimal performance, what do you expect sports television viewing to look like in 50 years?
In 50 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that however you consume the content will be on a screen. I think that stays a constant, Brian, that it'll be a screen. And we've got lots of different screens. Right now, there's a contact lens that you wear. And if you're cycling or running, will project like a heads up display data for you. So it will be on a screen. The screens will change and become more part of the body. Right now, I guess the most popular screen on the body would be a watch, an Apple Watch. But I think the screens will be integrated more into the body, much like contact lenses. I think that, so that's sort of how we consume it, clearly be on some sort of display or screen. I think how we produce it with small, high-powered, high-performance cameras that are going to be placed robotically in any event and produce a game, much like you would if you had a production truck and lots of cameras and people and blah, blah, blah. They'll do it all without it. That means that any event, your kids' Little League game tonight in Larchmont, New York, will have a production quality that will be very much like what you're seeing for the World Series on ESPN, even Sunday Night Baseball. It'll be that good. So it'll open up that frontier of any event, anywhere, will have high production values so that you'll be able to really enjoy it. Tracking technology will go along with that. You'll be able to get all this data off that young baseball player just by watching them. So that will change. We still, time shifting, that's all, we can do all that stuff now, but I think miniaturization, more powerful devices, screens that will start to really shape, and we'll have screens that will be built into our sleeve of our shirt, for example. So if you're sitting there where you are now and you want to do something, you could probably just tap your shirt that will be enabled by a flexible screen that's high powered but low cost. And so screens will be everywhere. There'll be no limit to where they can be because of the powerfulness, and also the ubiquity, and it'll be less expensive. So screens will be just absolutely everywhere.
Getting you on screen, you're not everywhere, but when you're here, you dispel such great knowledge, and why everywhere you go, people want to be a part of what you're about. And given your track record, your resume, what you've done in advancing technology from a sports viewer's perspective and watching television to all the other components of what you were talking about, tracking. I mean, there's so many neat aspects of your career. And Sam, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to help get those out, to tell more people about what you've done, and to do it in a fun way, in an entertaining way, and really learn who this man is behind all of the achievements. Who really is Sam McCleery underneath it all? And I think, Sam, we were able to do that.
Brian, thank you. I'm a huge fan of the show. I'm friends with many of your guests. It's an honor to be here. I've enjoyed it. It's been a stimulating session. I knew it would be. And thank you, Bryan Fenley, for this opportunity.